Every generation produces voices that disrupt the status quo. Some are celebrated instantly. Others are questioned, criticized, or even mocked before their message is understood. Charlie Kirk's journey belongs to the latter. His life reveals a truth as old as time, that the courage to be misunderstood is one of the highest forms of strength. From the earliest days of his work, Charlie felt the sting of controversy. He was young, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge narratives that dominated schools, campuses, and political conversations. He didn't just whisper his beliefs. He declared them, sometimes on stages where people twice his age refused to tread. And because of that boldness, he faced storms most would have run from. He discovered something powerful. The same words that stirred inspiration in some could ignite fury in others. His faith and values often placed him in the crosshairs of heated debates. Yet instead of retreating, Charlie chose to anchor himself in truth. Better to be misunderstood for standing on conviction than celebrated for bowing to lies, he once reflected. That wasn't just a catchy line. It was the shield he carried into battles, emotional, political, and spiritual. At the height of his early controversies, Charlie was often painted unfairly. Critics misquoted him, twisted his ideas, and branded him with labels meant to silence him. For any young leader, this would have been enough reason to shrink back, to conform, or at least to soften the edges. But Charlie wasn't interested in comfort. He believed that clarity often comes through conflict and growth through pressure. Instead of folding, he leaned deeper into his faith. He prayed more, listened longer, and found solace in scriptures that reminded him that even the greatest figures in history, Moses, David, Paul, and even Christ himself, were once misunderstood. This realization became his fuel. Controversy was not a sign of failure but of purpose. And so, he walked into public debates, news interviews, and rallies not with arrogance but with the quiet strength of a man who had already wrestled with fear and chosen faith. Through those early controversies, Charlie's spirit was tested. But with each attack, he grew sharper. With each misunderstanding, he learned resilience. And with each storm, he emerged with a voice more refined than before. The truth is, controversy doesn't create character, it reveals it. And Charlie Kirk discovered early that his calling was not to be liked but to be faithful. Still, it wasn't easy. Behind the public firestorms were private moments of weariness. There were nights when the weight of harsh headlines or slanderous tweets pressed against his chest like a heavy stone. In those moments, silence felt easier. Disappearing seemed tempting, but that's when his faith spoke loudest. In prayer, he found strength. In scripture, he rediscovered his why. And in those close to him, mentors, friends, and family, he found reminders that God does his greatest work through those who refuse to bow to fear. And so, each time the world misunderstood him, Charlie chose courage again. The controversies did not crush him. They shaped him. They became the very soil where his resilience was planted. And as he grew, he realized something profound. The path of truth is never smooth, and misunderstanding is often the price of influence. That became his anchor, and soon, the boy who faced his first controversies was no longer just reacting. He was thriving in the fire. His story reminds us that controversy isn't always a curse. Sometimes it's the confirmation that you're walking a path worth defending. The storms didn't pass. They grew stronger. But Charlie's strength grew too. It is easy to admire the public victories of strong men, the sound bites that go viral, or the confident speeches delivered with fire and conviction. What most people don't see is the lonely road behind the spotlight. The nights when words cut like daggers, when rejection settles into your bones like a chill, and when even the strongest hearts whisper, "I don't know how much longer I can take this." Charlie Kirk knew that road well. From his earliest steps into public life, criticism came hand in hand with conviction. But as his influence grew, so did the opposition. It wasn't just the occasional sneer or sarcastic tweet anymore. It became an avalanche, headlines designed to smear, organized campaigns to cancel, even people he once trusted slowly pulling away. There were nights when rejection felt unbearable. Former friends distanced themselves. Some churches closed their doors to him. Online hate poured in like a flood. And for a young man still figuring out his place in the world, it could have broken him. But instead, it built him. Charlie realized something profound in those dark seasons. Being misunderstood is not the same as being wrong. That truth became his compass. Whenever accusations piled high, he would sift them carefully. Was there truth in what was said? Could he grow from it? If yes, he humbled himself. But if not, he refused to let falsehood define him. This mindset carried him through countless storms. At one college event, a student angrily accused him of being hateful. Her voice shook with anger as she pointed at him and shouted, "You don't care about people like me. You just want to spread division." The words cut deep. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Cameras rolled. Students leaned forward. Tension rippled through the hall. Charlie paused. He didn't shout back. He didn't lash out in anger, even though his flesh wanted to. Instead, he took a slow breath, looked her directly in the eye, and replied with calmness, "I don't hate you. I care enough to tell you the truth, even if you don't like it. That's what love looks like." The room fell silent. The confrontation that could have erupted into chaos instead revealed his resilience, refusing to answer hate with hate, but standing strong with calm conviction. That was the essence of Charlie's journey. Courage not in loud defiance, but in controlled grace. But here's the truth few ever saw. Behind the stage, the pain was real. After moments like that, he would step off the podium to applause and handshakes, but the weight on his chest didn't fade. It followed him back to hotel rooms where silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Nights in unfamiliar cities became his crucible. Lying awake, staring at the ceiling, he often asked, "Lord, why me? Why did you choose me for this road? I'm not strong enough. I'm not perfect. I didn't ask for this burden." And in those moments of weakness, Scripture became his lifeline. He clung to verses like a drowning man clings to driftwood. One in particular, 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, became his anchor. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." It was as though God himself whispered through the noise, "You don't have to be enough, Charlie. I am enough for you." That reminder changed everything. Rejection no longer meant he was disqualified. It meant he was being refined. Misunderstanding was not a curse but a calling. The lonely nights didn't disappear, but their meaning transformed. Instead of breaking him, they became the forge where his resilience was formed. Over time, Charlie began to see a pattern. The very places where rejection tried to silence him were the places where young hearts were most desperate for courage. He would often receive quiet messages after events. Students thanking him for speaking boldly, for being a voice when they felt voiceless. Some confided that his resilience had given them the courage to speak up in classrooms, or to defend their beliefs at the dinner table, or even to embrace faith they had been hiding. That's when Charlie realized, courage is contagious. One act of bravery can ripple outward, inspiring dozens, even hundreds. The stand you take doesn't just affect you, it gives permission for others to stand too. His own words became a rallying cry. Courage is contagious. When you refuse to bow to lies, you give others permission to stand too. This was no longer just about him surviving storms. It was about building a movement of resilience, teaching others that rejection is not the end but the beginning of strength. Charlie's journey through rejection and hate left scars. Yes, but those scars became stories, and those stories became seeds planted in the hearts of a new generation. The critics thought rejection would silence him. Instead, it amplified him. The haters thought hate would crush him. Instead, it refined him. The misunderstandings that once wounded him became the very foundation of his legacy. Because the true measure of a man is not how many people cheer when he enters a room, but how faithfully he stands when the crowd boos. So the courage to be misunderstood is really the courage to be faithful. Faithful to your convictions, faithful to truth, faithful to the one who called you, even when the world turns away. What if the price of courage wasn't applause, but rejection? What if every stand you took meant being misunderstood, criticized, or even hated? That's the road Charlie Kirk walked, and through it, He discovered that resilience is not about avoiding pain, but about enduring it with faith, conviction, and love.